Senator Elizabeth Warren and Representative Ocasio-Cortez are drawing attention to what really happened at Sears. Now, there are hundreds of stores closing throughout the country, and it appears that there was some questionable activity going on with the former CEO, Eddie Lampert. According to reports, under Eddie Lampert, who led Sears from 2013 to 2018, the company closed more than 3,500 stores, shed some of its most valuable assets, including Land's End, and laid off thousands. Sears filed for bankruptcy in October. And guess what? These incredibly smart and strong women have some questions. Take a look.
No, today it's a very different Sears.
And that's because in the early 2000s, Steven Mnuchin's old college roommate, a private investment fund owner named Eddie Lampert, put his friend, Steven Mnuchin, on the Sears board. And then he drove the company into the ground.
Instead of investing in the company, he sucked about $6 billion in value out of it and then did stock buybacks, which certainly made him a lot of money.
He loaded Sears with huge amounts of debt, making it hard to withstand shocks to the retail industry and the 2008 financial crisis, because debt is what makes Wall Street money. He closed over 3,500 stores and fired more than 250,000 workers.
And talk about conflicts. Lampert even sold Sears real estate to himself and then rented that real estate back to Sears at prices he helped set.
Sears filed for bankruptcy. Thousands of workers lost their jobs, but Eddie Lampert, he likely walked away with billions.
Yeah. Now, if this sounds crazy to you, it's because it is.
Retail workers and workers across the country deserve so much better.
Yeah, and they also deserve a Treasury Secretary who fights for them, not someone who spent a decade raking in cash for himself at the expense of hundreds of thousands of Sears employees.
So, all right, as usual, let me give you a little bit more context here. Everything they said is, of course, 100% right. So some of this is called asset stripping. So they'll just sell off some of the parts here, like one of the best asset that Sears had was Land's End. So they sell it off and they take the money, and the people like Lampert oftentimes just pocket the money, but then that does not go back into the company. In fact, the most common way that they do that is with debt. So they will put a lot of debt into the company, and they'll just take the debt that normally you would get to put back in as an investment into the company to improve the stores, build new stores, etc. That's why companies normally get debt to do new projects, except they don't do that. A lot of these private equity guys just take the debt and put it in their pocket. They're like, well, okay, I already made money, so I don't care what happens to the company after that. Because if I paid, let's make it up an example. If I paid $1 billion and I took out $2 billion of debt, and then I took the $2 billion and put it in my pocket because I own the company, well, I just made $1 billion. So even if it goes bankrupt, who cares? And so this is a common trick that a lot of private equity does. And this is how they destroyed so many of these stores, that it makes it seem like, well, because of Amazon, etc., a lot of those stores are closing down. No, a lot of them, these chains were bought by different private equity guys who stripped their assets, loaded them with debt, made money off of it, and destroyed the companies, full well knowing what would happen. So in this case with Sears, Sears, now that Lampert is not the CEO anymore and has gone bankrupt, the people managing it are suing Lampert and Mnuchin. And they're suing them for $2 billion that they said they removed from the company, obviously since they're suing them, saying they did it in an improper and potentially illegal way. And so there's so many scandals in the Trump White House that we lose track of what would be horrible scandals in any other administration. If the Treasury Secretary was being sued as part of a lawsuit for $2 billion from stealing from one of the best known brands in America, that would be a massive scandal in any other administration.
Yes.
And part of how they are enabled to do these things, these companies, is because they load up the board with their friends. So, hey, I bought it, I'm get to choose the board, I'm gonna put in Mnuchin, he'll let me do anything. The board is supposed to be a check on the CEO, but since he put in the board himself, he goes, hey, everybody on the board, let me asset strip this company. Let me load it up with debt and put it in my pocket. And Mnuchin and all the other guys who are getting paid to be on the board go, absolutely. Well, I think it's a great idea to rip this company off. Go for it. That's why Mnuchin is also being sued. But we told you, Donald Trump, he took the top grifters in the country. To be fair to him, he did this right. He got the A team of con men and made him his cabinet.
That's right, that's right. And look, you covered the important substance of this story really well, but I wanna just quickly comment and mention how I've seen the media overall cover this story. And look, to be fair, I haven't seen every single report, so maybe there are others out there in the mainstream press that are doing a decent job breaking this down and talking about what happens with private equity. But the segment that I heard Nicole Wallace do was incredibly dismissive because it did not focus on the actual substance and what's going on at Sears and what this lawsuit contains. It was more a conversation about how politicians are scrambling to associate themselves with AOC because of her popularity. So the focus has been, oh, everything's about this popularity contest. Everyone wants to know who AOC is gonna endorse. No, that is not what this is about. This is about a very serious issue that's actually harming a lot of employees throughout the country. And rather than covering the substance of that, you're talking about nonsense, gossipy politics in Washington.
And Nicole Wallace, did you ever stop to consider why AOC is so popular? So she's also the same person who did the segment that I was referring to earlier in the show, fantasizing about if Bernie Sanders wasn't in the race at all. And so, but meanwhile, you don't stop to think, how come this freshman congresswoman, that's the youngest woman to ever be elected into the House of Representatives, is so incredibly popular? Maybe people like her ideas. I know you guys never ever focus on the substance of any issue. Like, what does she look like? What's her demographic? Where's she from?
Right.
Etc. Oh my God, people want to be next to her. Or maybe they both care about this policy and are trying to protect the American people. And Elizabeth Warren has a deep, deep track record of doing that. You would know that if you cared about the issues, but you don't. And it's not surprising because Nicole Wallace is a former communications director for George W. Bush. And that's why she did this segment on Fox News. Oh, right, no, she didn't. She did it on MSNBC. That's Washington's version of liberal.
Look, they want the ratings because they know AOC is popular and people are paying attention to what she's doing. So they do want to talk about it, but they don't want to get into the substance of what AOC and Senator Warren is discussing here, right? They have no interest in that.
Nicole Wallace and everyone else in the establishment is perfectly happy to let their private equity friends strip these companies to the bone, make a buck off of it, and have all those people fired. Remember all the people who lost their jobs because Eddie Lampert decided to strip the assets of Sears. You think anybody on cable news cares about that? If they do know about it, they certainly don't care. And a lot of them have no idea what's going on. On the go, don't worry, we got you covered. You can still listen to TYT at our new podcast network. Find us on Apple Podcasts, the Google Play Store, or at tyt.com/podcast.